So in my best books video, I said that there were some high highs and some low lows this year. So here we are to talk about the lowest of lows. Hi, my name is Sarah Freshly and welcome back to Freshly Read Books. It's tough because some of these are very disappointing actually. Like there were books that I thought that I was really gonna like, but here we are, we're gonna get into it. We're going from 10th to 1st. First being the book I the most didn't like this year. So I will say the books that are on like the higher end of the list, I didn't like despise or anything. It's really the books that are on the bottom of this, the ones that we're gonna talk about last, that I really had more of an issue with. This is mostly because I try not to finish any books that I'm really not enjoying to that extent. If I give anything a 1 star, a 1 point whatever, if it's under 2 stars, it means I should have DNF'd that book. Like, it means I'm annoyed at myself for finishing the book. So that's supposed to never happen, but it does happen sometimes. And we're gonna talk about some of those times. But I will say not all of these books fall into that category. That's really like the ones later. Kicking us off at number 10 is You Have a Friend in 10A by Maggie Shipstead. This is one of the very disappointing ones because I really love Maggie Shipstead, or at least I really love Great Circle by Maggie Shipstead. I also read Astonish Me by her, I think last year, and that was kind of a meh book for me. And then this is a collection of short stories that she came out with. I particularly loved the cover. However, this book sent me straight into a reading slump, and also I have not read short stories since it. I have been in the middle of a short story collection since this book because I didn't want to read any more short stories. It was hard enough getting through this. I have no recollection of any of the short stories. No, wait, I do. The titular short story, You Have a Friend in 10A, that was the best one. That book was about a starlet who was in a cult or is in a cult, and she's like taking a flight, and like the whole little short story takes place on the plane. And I think I mostly liked it just because I had recently watched the NXIVM docu-series. Maybe I just like read that at the right time, but everything else was very, very mediocre. But Great Circle's still great. So if you're thinking about it, it's one of my favorite books of all time. That's why that was so sad. We have another one like that later. It's very heartbreaking, but that's for later. That's a later problem. In 9th is The School for Good Mothers by Jessamine Chen. So this one I read really recently and I didn't hate it by any means. I think it was just like a lack of potential, maybe. And I think that that's what a lot of these ones at the end here are. This is about Frida, who she does something terrible and she leaves her child alone at home for several hours. And the book starts with her being away from her child, coming back, and it turns out that her kid was like screaming, crying, and neighbors had heard and called somebody about it. And then she's sent away to the School for Good Mothers, where she's supposed to learn how to be a good mother. But the school is very extreme. It's a little bit like dystopian in that feel, like the school itself is. And I think there were aspects to it that were really interesting. Like when she first got to the school, a couple of the things like going on at the early stages when you're kind of just like learning about it in general, like those are really interesting. I think it poses some good questions. But because the main character is pretty unlikable considering how the book starts, it makes it difficult to really connect to her. And also I think she's just written in a way that is difficult to connect to, just besides that, even if she was a likable character. I think it's because she feels really disconnected to the like world around her, to the people that are around her, even when it's people that she's very close to. So I think that that makes it a little bit more challenging. But I do like some of the things that it was trying to say. So yeah, that's kind of why I feel like it was just like a loss of potential. As the book went on and as you're going through like more and more like lessons that they're learning in the school, it was just repetitive, I guess. It was repetitive. A disappointing read, but okay. It was an okay read. I was glad to have read it. Well, I was glad that I finished it. I think most of these books I considered at one point or another DNFing. So I don't know, take with that what you will. In 8th, we have Other People's Clothes by Kala Henkel. This was sent to me by Anchor Books, so sorry it's on this list. My bad. I had this on my TBR for I guess not that long, but it felt like a long time because I was really excited when I first got the book, and every time that I was like picking TBRs and stuff, I was trying to figure out a way to get this on it. And so I got it onto my fall TBR, and as I was getting to the end of fall, I was like, you know what, it's time. I'm just gonna read it. It's a short book. Like, I'm gonna put aside all of the other books that I feel like I should read right now. I'm gonna read this one. And it really let me down. This about two girls, Zoe and Haley. So Zoe is like our main character, our protagonist. She is dealing with the loss of her best friend who died, I think like a year or two before the start of the story. So Zoe is going to Berlin to do school there, like a study abroad type thing for a while, and she's going with another girl that's in her school, Haley, who she like vaguely knows but doesn't know super well. But Zoe has this kind of like personality where she really clings on to people. It's like almost obsessive. So she was like that with her past best friend, and she's kind of getting to be that way with Haley. I will say I don't think it was like quite to the extent that the synopsis made it seem like. I thought it was going to be a little bit creepier, but it's not really, I would say. There are creepy aspects to it, and I did really like that. It just came from a different area entirely. They're also very into art, especially Haley, and like this performance art type thing, and there's a project, I guess you could call it, that Haley starts, which takes way too long into the book to actually happen. That was where I struggled the most, was the beginning of the book. I was like, I don't know, should I DNF this, should I not? And the only reason I feel like I didn't during that time, which in retrospect I'm glad, I think that the end of the book was way better than the beginning, but the only reason I didn't was because I had just DNF'd 2 books and I was just feeling sad and I just wanted to finish a book. So this just happened to be the book. So I pushed through that part, which is good because it did get better, but I just don't think that it ever fully came back from where it was. And even though it did get better, it still wasn't great. Next is Day by, I think, Michael Cunningham. I don't have a physical copy of this or the next 2 books, actually. Day was actually, I believe, the first book that I read this year, and it was also sent to me by a publishing company. I don't remember what it is, but I'll pop it up. So once again, apologies. But it basically takes place on one day across 3 different years, and it's 2019, 2020, and 2021. So very different things are happening, obviously, during those times because the pandemic. And I think the problem with telling I thought the idea was really cool, but you don't connect to any of the characters hardly at all. And I struggled so hard with, because you would start off like the day and you'd be like, okay, what's going on from, you feel like you're like meeting these people again for the first time. It felt like work. The book felt like work. Like every day that we saw, I felt like I was doing the work that I would typically have to do at the beginning of the book with very little payoff. In fact, I would say like basically no payoff. I think there was meant to be payoff, but I didn't feel it. I didn't feel paid. I felt shortchanged. So the 6th place book is The Starling House by Alex E. Harrow, which in retrospect I should have DNF'd. I mean, the ending kind of made up for it a little bit, but not really. I thought about DNFing this book so many times. This was a book that my book club back in Florida was reading. I liked every once in a while be reading the same book as them just because it's nice. And also I was seeing a bunch of them for a bachelorette party, so it just seemed like good timing. But I don't think Alex E. Harrow's for me. I read another book by her, The Once and Future Witches, which was okay. Like it didn't make me feel like, oh, I have to read another book by her. But then when I saw the synopsis of The Starling House, I was really intrigued by it, and it seemed atmosphere-wise to be super up my alley. And if you watched my best of video and basically any other video where I talk about books I really love, atmosphere is everything. And I will say, I do think that The Starling House had aspects of that, but it was severely lacking in like basically everything else for me. I don't think the flow of it was good. I don't think the pacing was good. I don't think the characters were built super well. I was very frustrated at the main character like the whole time for not, she had one solid goal like the whole book, and it had to do with doing something for somebody else. And she never talked to that person about whether or not they actually wanted that thing. And the whole time I'm just like, just talk to them. Just please talk to them first before you get like obsessed with this idea that's going to like change everything and everything's gonna be so much better once you do this. Like, I was so annoyed by that. So that didn't help. But I've been known to get annoyed at certain things that characters will do in books, but still really like the books. I think bringing out a strong emotion, I don't know, it says something about a book, but besides that, there was nothing. There was just nothing there for me. Overall, not my cup of tea. I almost DNF'd it a few times, but I kept talking to people that were reading it about it, and they were like, no, I think you'd like the book. And I get it, because if like explaining what the synopsis of the book is and like its vibe, it does seem like a very me book, like this creepy old house where there's something like mysterious happening there, and this like girl like feels like she's being pulled to it and all of this, and like why is she being pulled to it, and her meeting the person that lives in there, all these questions, and it takes place in a small town, like all of that. Love it. Hated the book though. So, okay, this next one I feel really bad about. Number 5 is A Court of Wings and Ruin by Sarah J Maas. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry, Sarah J Maas fans. My sincerest apologies. I want to love her writing. She's got a great name. I mean, I'm biased, but I really like it. But that book was so boring and it was so long and they were so dumb. I would like to preface this by saying I really enjoyed the second book of the series. I hated the first one. I believe it was on my least favorite books of whatever year I read that. But I heard that it got better from there. So I read the second book and I agree, I do think it got better. And then I got to the third book. But I don't think I disliked it as much as the first book. So that's something. But it was offensively long for the things that were happening in it. At least in the first one, it felt a little bit more structured and a little bit more fast-paced. But in the third book, it was just like so drawn out, so slow. It's hard to get somebody to care about like a relationship after they're already together. Or maybe that's a me problem, I don't know. So I just like didn't care about like the couple scenes anymore, and there was a lot of them. And also, I'm just so sick of Feyre. I haven't liked her like the whole time. I was kind of coming around to her a little bit in the second book, so I thought we were on a good trajectory. And then third book, I was like, I just can't with you anymore. I'm still torn as to whether or not I want to continue the series. I know that the fourth book is like a Christmassy novella, so it'd be a good time of year. I do have a hold at the library for the book, so if it does happen to come for Christmas or before Christmas, I'll probably read it. And then I'll decide. I know the next book is taken from a different perspective. So there's hope, but there's not a lot of hope. Okay, fourth, and I think by far the most disappointing one on this list, like the one I'm the most saddened by, is Saint X by Alexis Schaken. The reason I say that is last year, Elsewhere by Alexis Schaken was my favorite book of the year. And now her one other book that she has out is my fourth least favorite of 2024. It's just, it hurts. It hurts my heart. I almost DNF'd it so many times. I wish I did. I should have. I don't know what I was thinking. The general synopsis is this girl, when she was younger, she went on a vacation with her family, and her older sister ends up dying, and it's like widely suspected to be a murder, but they weren't able to convict anybody. They had 2 people in custody for a little bit, but released them because they had an alibi. And so this is many years in the future, and what's our main character's name? Claire. So Claire is living in New York, and she happens to see one of the guys that was taken in for her sister's murder, but then released. And she like starts talking to him, like kind of striking up a friendship with him without him knowing who she is. And I was under the impression that that was going to be to find out more about what had happened. But in reality, it was just her thinking it's smart to like ask him about those things, and like in her head that was like, I guess, kind of her goal, but she never actually did it, or about like any of his past at all. So it was like, what are you doing? Why are you here? Like, and it's supposed to like have these grander messages about the like classism. So her family being there and being this very like privileged family to be traveling there to go on vacation. It was somewhere in the Caribbean, I can't remember where. And these like workers and like the vast different lives that they live to them, and the repercussions of like what happened for both families, and how somehow it was like worse for the people that like they didn't even lose a relative. It was supposed to have all that stuff in it, but like, did it really? Did it say anything that wasn't like blatantly obvious that I couldn't have gotten from watching one episode of The White Lotus? No. Any episode of The White Lotus says more than this book does about those things. So then in third place, I feel like this is another one that people will be upset about. It's People We Meet on Vacation by Emily Henry. I know, I'm so sorry. It is just so insanely repetitive. It's so repetitive. This is one of those books where I like don't understand, especially just like out of Emily Henry's books in general, because I've heard many people say that this is their favorite. I cannot fathom in my brain how this out of her other books is your favorite. I just can't. Let me first explain what it's about. So we have, Poppy and Alex, and they are like friends that met in college, and every year they go on this vacation together. And then in the present timeline, Poppy, like something has happened between the two of them. You don't know what, but you know that they haven't talked in a long time. But Poppy decides that she wants to get back together for another vacation like they used to have, to try to like repair things. And so you're getting flashes of the present, of them like on that present vacation, while also getting flashes to each of their previous vacations. So it'll be like 6 summers ago, 5 summers ago. I can't remember how many there actually are. At least 8 summers ago. So it'll be like 8 summers ago this summer, 7 summers ago this summer. That's the structure of this book, which puts you in a real Groundhog Day situation. There are only so many times that I can read about 2 people that like each other going on vacation with each other and something almost happens, but then it doesn't. And I also feel like the banter in this one wasn't as good as the banter was in the like between characters in the other books. Like even in Happy Place, I didn't even really like Win, the main character from that one, but the banter in that book, great. This one, I like both these characters, didn't like the banter, or at least I didn't like it as much, I will say. It still had its moments, like it's still Emily Henry, you know, she knows what she's doing. I do want to say though, I've read 4 other Emily Henrys and one of them was on my top books of the year, so like this is not Emily Henry hate, this is just that book hate. So now, second place, almost the worst book I read this year, is The Night House by Jo Nesbø. This was sent to me by Vintage. Once again, I sincerely apologize for how much I didn't like your book. I was so excited to get this one. Also, like the cover, come on. It was so like Halloween-y and fun, and it very much looked like one of those vintage thriller novels. Like I was so excited about this, but it was so bad. So this book is about Richard, who's 14 years old. It very much reads YA. I don't think it's intended to be YA, but it very much, not even YA, it reads middle grade. Like it reads like a Fear Street novel, which isn't good. I mean, I loved R.L. Stine growing up, don't get me wrong, but I did revisit Fear Street as an adult, and let me tell you, not good writing. And also, I would like to say, I've read Jo Nesbø before. I read The Snowman, I think it's called. It's like the 7th book in the Harry Hole detective series, and that was good. Which is another reason why I was excited to read this, because it wasn't even a detective novel, because I'm not huge on detective novels, especially not like the super classic version of the detective novel, which I felt like that one was. So I was excited to read like a standalone book by him. Probably won't do it again. So this is about Richard, who's 14 years old, and he's sent to live with his aunt and uncle in this like remote town. He's a very unlikable character. He's basically a bully. And he gets this kid to like hang out with them, and they go to this phone booth and they call this number in the phone booth because they want to like prank call people, and his friend, not friend, he's not really his friend, he's just like a kid that will hang out with him, but this kid gets sucked into the phone. Yes, you heard that right. It is described very gruesomely, and it happens like right away in the book. Richard is trying to tell people this. They obviously don't believe him. It's this whole deal. People think that like Richard did it, but also like he's younger. Do they really trust him with that? I'm sorry, the more I remember about this book, the more annoyed I'm getting. Also, I don't know how much I can say without like massive spoilers. I don't think you should read this book, if I'm honest with you. But also if you are interested, like I don't want to spoil it for you. That's no fun. So I'm trying to think about what I can say and what I can't say, because a lot of the really frustrating parts came at the end. But the whole first half-ish to 75% is written in such a way that feels very much like a Fear Street novel in the worst possible ways, where we're following this kid that nobody believes, and like these creepy things are happening, but nobody believes that they're actually happening. And then we get this like insane tone shift that happens. And there was a moment when I was like, maybe this isn't so bad. Maybe this was all a part of the plan. And then it went on and I was like, oh no, that was a part of the plan, but also the plan sucks. The plan was like almost remotely good, and then actually it sucks. And that's what reading this book was. I wish I could tell you more. I wish I could tell you about the last quarter, because I don't think I've ever been more frustrated by a book. The decisions, the writing decisions, like what? But I won't, because you might want to read this book, and you shouldn't just listen to one person on the internet tell you not to read a book. You can make that decision for yourself. And if you do decide to read it, I don't want to ruin that for you, because it was at least entertaining in its frustration for me. So I don't know, that's something. So we're here. We're to my least favorite book of 2024. It's In the Weeds by B.K. Borison. I've talked about this one already. This is the second book of a series. This is the second book in the Lovelight Farm series. Literally the only reason why I finished it was because it was the second book in the series, and I wanted to continue reading the series because I already had the third one, and they each follow different couples, and I liked Lovelight Farms, so I was like, if I can get past this one, I think it'll get better. In retrospect, I should have just DNF'd it but continued in the series. That would have been fine. That would have been an okay thing for me to do. So this follows Beckett, who lives in Lovelight Farms, which we saw in the first one, as well as Evelyn St. James, who also was in the first book, but she was visiting. She's like this social media influencer that like travels around and shows different places, but she's trying to put more of an emphasis on like more local community type things and like giving recognition to these smaller towns instead of just like big places that everybody already knows about, which is why she ends up going to Lovelight Farms. But her and Beckett actually already knew each other before that. They met briefly a while ago. This is stuff that you find out in like the first book, so none of it's spoilers. Like one night stand type thing, but like Beckett was just visiting and she actually like lived there, or maybe she was also visiting wherever that was. It was in a city or something. They see each other again in Lovelight Farms and you can tell there's like weird vibes there, so that's, you find out all that. And then this book is their love story. I feel like there was so much that could have been done with Evelyn. Like I feel like she could have been this really great character because we already had this like background for her. And yeah, it was a little tropey, like having this like person that's like into social media, but like she's lost herself and she wants to like get back to like the roots of why she does it and all this kind of thing. That's a little played out, but it's still something. And I think that it could have been interesting in that way, if nothing else. Like it could have just been the trope if nothing else, but it was so like one note and like that wasn't even the note. And Beckett was no notes. Not no notes in a good way. Like I have plenty of notes for his character. Beckett, how do I explain how much I did not like Beckett? This man was, he's supposed to be like the grumpy man. You know, it's supposed to be this like grumpy sunshine situation. He's not grumpy in a fun way. He's just grumpy. And everybody else tells you it's in a fun way. They're like, oh, that's just Beckett. He's grumpy, but it's in a fun way. And you're like, I'm waiting for the fun way. Like, what's fun about it? Because to me, he's just in a bad mood all the time. And the one thing that's supposed to give him like the soft spot is the fact that he has adopted like 4 kittens, which he does in the first book, but like the kittens are are they a large part of this book, or are they an accessory to Beckett to make him seem more human? They're accessories. You guessed right. They're just accessories to Beckett. He's like written as this person that's like really into caring for animals, but also like he leaves kittens alone in his house all the time, like for way too long. And as somebody who adopted 2 kittens not that long ago, you can't do that. You can't just leave them alone for like extended periods of time. What are you thinking? Especially to like roam free in the entire house. Do you know how many dangerous things there are? Kittens will eat anything. And all of that was bad enough. But there's this scene where Beckett finds out that his sister's ex-boyfriend, or I don't know if they were ever like really dating, but he's like breaking things off with her. And the things that he said about her were really not cool. Very rude. Not a good guy. We can all agree on that. Beckett and all of us can agree on that. But Beckett's response is to get immediately very angry and in a way that's very unattractive and a little bit scary. If I had seen what Evelyn saw, I would be like, no, I'm out. No, I'm out. You need anger management and I'm out. I'm not going to be around a man who gets this angry this quickly and like isn't going to check on the sister, but is instead like, let me find this man and do things. You know what I mean? Like that's just not an appropriate response. And Evelyn instead was like, I guess I'll come with you. Let me grab my sweater. Isn't he so cute? So angry, but like I'll grab my sweater and like make sure he doesn't kill him, I guess. Maybe instead be like, hey, we should check on your sister, right? The one that's like directly impacted by this and that like matters in your life going forward. Whereas like that guy does not matter at all. So yeah, that's why I didn't like this book. Once I really didn't care about the characters, that made the entire love story moot to me. So those are my 10 least favorite books of this year. I got a little more heated, a little bit more passionate than I was expecting to. Like I expected something out of me, but not that much. But nonetheless, it is sometimes kind of fun to read books that you don't like and that you like passionately don't like because they're kind of fun to talk about. And I love hearing when other people feel the same way. Anyways, that is going to do it for this. Please let me know what your least favorite book of 2024 was. If you have it already, I know that this is early and, you know, reading hasn't finished for the year, but I promise if I read any terrible big stinker books in December, I will talk about them in my 2025 worst books. I promise. Thank you for watching. If you liked it, please do consider subscribing and I will see you in the next one. Bye.